And we're back with On the Record with Tiffany. And I have Beth and Sarah from Pantsuit Politics, two ladies who have differing opinions about our political system. I want to ask you about social injustice as you see it, because I really never thought we would see what we have in the last 6 months. So for you, Sarah, when you saw the George Floyd incident, when that happened, those 8 minutes and 46 seconds, how did that sort of bring home what's going on here to you?
The murder of George Floyd, I think, is a trauma that will take generations for this country to heal from. Mm-hmm. Not because it was a unique circumstance in America, but because it revealed the incredible and heartbreaking tragedy in such a human way. It's really interesting because I think you can see two sides of the same coin in 2020 with both the pandemic and this racial reckoning that we are facing. The pandemic, because as Beth was talking, I was thinking, we've had tragedies in this country, but I don't think any since probably World War II that touched the life of every single American. And whether or not you know someone infected with COVID-19, or you refuse to wear a mask, you don't know anybody, you don't see it, you refuse to wear a mask, you have been affected by the pandemic. And I think in such a interesting way, George Floyd and that racial reckoning that we are facing is like the flip. It's instead of universal, that video is so intimate and individual that it reveals the universal, right? Because you watch that man leave this earth, and in such a painful and heartbreaking, tragic, criminal way. And so I think the way that rocked everyone, even the people who think that it's just bad apples and our Black and Indigenous and Browns brothers and sisters are not treated any differently than white people. Like even no matter how you tried to come to Jesus with that video, like everybody saw it, right? Everybody understands what happened in that moment as far as that individual life that is no longer here. And I think like it felt so impactful in those first few weeks after the video, with the marches and with all these other stories coming to national consciousness. I'm not going to say many people have been aware for, they already knew about the stories of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all these names that we live with and that we say out loud. But it felt intense, and it continues to feel intense. But I don't think we've even begun to see the impact of, I think about every, sort of young person coming to consciousness, college students, like people who are seeing this, and it is forming their very identity about what the system of justice is like in this country, or the people having their own individual circumstances that's forming that identity. And I just think we are just at the very beginning. And what I hope is that it's not just consciousness, because I think consciousness is essential. I think that was a huge leap forward for everyone's consciousness as far as racial injustice and the need for social justice. But what I really hope is that we are moving past consciousness into action and into reformulating our systems and finding justice for every citizen beyond cultural changes or societal ideas. I think those are essential and important, but I'm ready for systemic changes so that we can get closer to that American idea that all men are created equal.
I love that. What was your take on this, Beth? Because at the time you were still were you still a Republican at that time when
No, no, I changed my party registration when the president was speaking about United States Representatives Omar and Tlaib, and mentioned that they should go back to where they came from. And no Republicans in Congress spoke out against that. That was for me the point where I thought we have such a blatant problem here within the party. And this really connects to my reaction to George Floyd's murder as well. I'm a middle-class white lady who has always voted Republican. And I think underlying my life has been an assumption that I've never stated for myself, but that has had to be there, that at least the forms of racial animus that I learned about in school are gone. And we have traces of racism, sure, but nobody really intends it, and we're working on it. And I think what the past several years have revealed to me, and I am ashamed that it had to be revealed in the ways that it's had to, is that that's just not true. When you watch the George Floyd video, and I'm so sorry for everyone who loves him, that video has had to be what it is in our national consciousness. What an unfair dimension to their grief.
Mm-hmm.
But when you watch the video, you cannot comfort yourself that if there are traces of racism, it's unintentional. I mean, there is such a deliberate devaluing of George Floyd's life happening, not just by the person who took his life, but by the officers who were there with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to tell my daughters about the country they live in when there's a video of a police officer deliberately killing a man over 8 minutes. That to me is just an unforgivable sin of our country that has been worked on so many lives where there weren't cell phones capturing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the big lesson for me politically has been that I can have all kinds of thoughts about how government works best, and I do. And also, I cannot get to those thoughts until we address whether every person in this country is treated as an equal citizen and their lives are valued equally and they are respected and their dignity is upheld. And that requires me to put aside differences that I have about economic policy or something, and lean into racial justice work and lean into the poverty that continues to be an embarrassing blight on our country, the addiction that we deal with, all the things that I would have said, well, our hearts are in the right place on this and we've got to just keep working at it. I minimized too much in my political consciousness, and I'm sorry for that. And it's something that I will be working on for the rest of my life, I think.
As we move into this election, what do you see as what should happen in the first 100 days of the next presidency, no matter who ends up winning? What would you want to see happen?
I think that is a very big question. I am glad there are literal teams of people
No.
that are in charge of this. I would hope that no matter who wins, that there will be a focus on uniting the country. I'm going to be honest and vulnerable that I think we've seen from 4 years that is not a priority of the Trump administration. So let me just speak to what I hope a Biden administration will do. I hope that there will be an emphasis on reconciliation. I hope that there will be a very purposeful effort, whatever investigations or accountability that people in Congress or others feel is necessary. I hope that there is a deliberate effort to keep the White House in particular out of those actions. And what I mean is, like, I hope that there are commissions, and I hope that maybe there are congressional investigation, but I hope that the president and the administration really stays out of it. I think that would be enormously helpful to everyone as we try to move past the really intense last 4 years. I think there needs to be a priority, obviously, on a national, strategic and coordinated federal response to the coronavirus instead of just punting to the states. And I think that there needs to be accelerated attention to our criminal justice system and to climate change. I mean, it's a big, long list. It's hard. It's hard to even think, what should you focus on first, honestly?
To my listeners, I say we are more alike than we are different, and unification for this nation is imperative. Digging in our heels and arguing and fighting and acting like this solutions, like wearing your mask and socially distancing and following what the science says about a pandemic. We have to all be of one accord on that, so that we can get rid of what is a microscopic predator that we're dealing with right now. And we should be theoretically focused on that and focused on everyone's health, because it's such an important matter. And you have nothing if you don't have your health. I mean, that is essential to us as humans. So come back. We have one more segment with Sarah and with Beth, and I just want to talk to them a little bit about our November 3rd election that's coming up, and all of the excitement, because there are so many people out and voting, and our nation is coming together in the sense that we are realizing our power. And so I'm excited to see the youth empowered and folks talking about what's next. So come on back and keep listening. Whether you agree or disagree, it's time for us to listen to one another. So you're listening to On the Record with Tiffany, and we'll see you in just a minute.